it doesn't matter if you're rooting for, whatever you believe in or this, as long as you're authentic. This is what people want to see, they want to be around people that are authentic. When I go out, I used to go out in Paris, famous metal clubs, and there was all of the scene there. You could meet with I don't know if you're familiar with any other French black metal band, but maybe Ondfodt.
Yeah.
Yes. This guy is legit, he when he says cut your flesh and worship Satan, you meet him live and this is what it is, right?
Mm.
But you also have hundreds, maybe big word, but dozens of other people who just gravitate around these individuals, and they you can tell that they try, and maybe they believe very hard that they try, but it's not convincing enough.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to episode 266 of Into the Necrosphere. This week, I am visiting with Billy Bayou, the man behind the French black metal band Glorior Belli. Glorior Belli have just put out their self-titled album on Dark Empire Records. It is the follow-up to 2018's The Apostates, and Billy and I got deep into his creative process, his views on the industry, his history of signing with a myriad of different labels, including some of the biggest in the scene. We also spoke about his love of music outside of the metal scene and how he has incorporated those influences into his sound. A very good guy who had a lot to say. It's going to be coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, we are well overdue for some unsanctioned filth, and we travel for that this week to a land down under. Munitions out of Australia have just put out an EP called Remote Death. This is one of my favorite tracks off of that release. It's a tune called Trapped. Munitions out of Australia with a song called Trapped. It's taken from their brand new EP Remote Death, available on Bandcamp. As always, the link to the Munitions Bandcamp will be in the description to the podcast. If you head over there and buy yourself some music, be sure to let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere who sent you. Also, be sure to hit me up if you have just come back from the studio with a brand new album that you've recorded with your mother's last penny and you're excited for somebody to check it out. Send me a note on intothenecrosphere@gmail.com or drop me a line on Instagram or Facebook. And if I like what I hear and you're unsigned, then you too will join the pantheon of legends known as the Unsanctioned Filth segment on Into the Necrosphere. I am a proud member, my friends, of the Horsemen of the Podcasting Apocalypse, as many of you should know. And if you don't, allow me to remind you that we kick off your week every Monday with a brand new episode of Horrorwolf 666 brought to you by the great Brandon Legion. On a Tuesday, yours truly casts hexes and slays poses right here on Into the Necrosphere. On a Wednesday, we've got Sensei Mike Hill of the bands Tombs and Scorpion Throne leading the charge with an episode of Everything Went Black. We also have Cheyenne of the band Trivax with his podcast Iblis Manifestations. I was a guest on last week's show. Very spicy conversation, so if you've missed that, make sure you go back and check it out. On a Thursday, Sensei Mike Hill returns, and he returns with a vengeance with one of my favorite podcasts of the week, the great Necromaniacs, and he is joined, of course, by his co-hosts Sheriff Mike Scondado and the Professor Jeff Kashid. They review new and old horror movies, a podcast not to be missed. And then to supplement that, on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, you've got the Sinister Minister, the Reverend Carl Haikara, taking you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the occult, the arcane, and the esoteric with his podcast Soul Knocks. I will be taking you through a journey of my own right after I'm done talking to Billy, so don't go anywhere because it's news rant time. And standing before the throne of almighty judgment this week are new tracks by Necrotted, Ghostbath, Crust, Ondfodt, and yes, we even listened to the new Machine Head single. Spoiler alert, it fucking sucks. The question is, does it suck quite as badly as all of the songs off of their absolute abortion of an album, Catharsis, that they foisted upon us back in 2018? You'll have to wait until the end of the show or nearer the end of the show to find out. For right now, though, sit back and join me as I welcome to Into the Necrosphere Billy Bayou of Glorior Belli. So, like I was saying, I'm a fan of this band going all the way back to, and I've spoken about the record on the podcast quite a few times. Meet Us at the Southern Sign. That's where I was introduced to you guys, and I have said this before, but I think in terms of opening tracks on a record, I think Once in a Blood Red Moon almost certainly has to be in the conversation for one of the best opening songs on any black metal record in the fucking history of the genre.
Thank you very much. It is. I mean, sometimes when I make those playlists before we go play a show, right?
Yeah.
I need to think like, what songs do we begin with? What songs do we include? And I can guarantee you that this one is always there on the set list.
Oh, dude, the thing that's so great about that song is the way you build it up to that crescendo. It's kind of this was the record where you started to bring in some of those sludge and some of those almost kind of bluegrass southern elements. But when the song finally kicks in, it's the most incredible example of payoff in a track that that you'll hear. You have to dig long and hard to find something that's better, that gives you more of a punch. So yeah, superb work. So as I said, I've been excited about talking to you, in part because my fandom of Glorior Belli goes back a long way. But I want to say congratulations on signing with Dark Empire Records.
Oh, thank you very much.
And Dark Empire Records, headed up by a legend. How did that deal happen?
Yeah, I'm friends with many people, whether they are legends or they're just your fucking neighbors. It doesn't matter to me, but I'm friends with a lot of people. Friends, you know what I mean.
Yeah. Friendly acquaintances.
Yeah. Some more than others. And, this deal is just through working with Dwid from Integrity, right, for a long time. We've known each other for, decades. He was the most infamous person in his own way, in his own scene, and we connect because I'm also not the most likable person in black metal scene, you could say. So we have a lot in common. And he's an absolute fucking genius. He has a reputation. I do too, but just if you put that aside, because it doesn't matter anyway, is motivating me to create stuff. Is absolutely insane. To have the chance to meet people like this that inspire you like this, and it's mutual. It's really great. So this is how it came through, with years of talking to each other, of trying to collaborate. I don't know if you heard, but I'm doing the bass live for Integrity.
I did not hear that at all. No.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's usually in Europe, so maybe that's why you didn't get it, because it's a different lineup in America. But yeah, so I've started touring with Integrity. This is a bit of a secret, but I started recording stuff for Integrity too. That's, if it goes well, it should be out soon. So
yeah. So a full bore new Integrity album that you'll appear on?
It's a shared effort. You will find. I cannot spoil the surprise, but it's gonna be great.
About to say the plot thickens. How did you meet Dwid?
I need to remember this. I think we met at a show. We started communicating online. Most definitely. He probably liked the same record that you mentioned before, Meet Us at the Southern Side. And we started to chat. He said, introduced himself. I said I also was a fan of his, and this is how we met. And then I came to one of his shows, and we bonded. We chat occasionally on the internet. Well, at least at the time, because now we chat every day on the internet. I speak like a goddamn. How old are you?
How old am I?
Yeah.
45.
Okay, that's fine. We're the same age. I feel like I speak like an old boomer or something. That's on the internet.
Bro, dude, I know exactly what you mean. My daughter is 10, and she's been a little more exposed to social media than I would like. But she'll use slang terms and stuff like that I've said to her a couple of times, speak English. Like, I have no fucking idea what you're talking about.
Jeez.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, Dwid, you're absolutely right. Very much a man who marches to the beat of his own drum. And I was curious about actually meeting him, because he's also got a reputation for being from what I've heard, being a pretty standoff dude if he doesn't know you.
It depends on the day, depends on how stressful the situation is, stuff like this, right? But we all have our days and good days and bad days. Lately, I would say he's, at least from what I've seen, right, is always going to be up for a conversation. If it's stimulating, if you are smart, if you ask, questions that might be interesting. If you're just a boring random person, it's just gonna, same as you would do probably with anyone else, right? If it's boring, if it's not stimulating, it's just gonna be like, why am I wasting my time with this? So feel free to approach him. He's always super friendly at the shows. He goes to speak to the fans, and be yourself is gonna be fine.
And also a dude who's been he's been very supportive of a lot of black metal and a lot of death metal, which, I don't necessarily think the hardcore scene, which is kind of, what he's best known for with Integrity. I don't think they've always been, with exceptions, they've not always been as friendly to the extreme side of music as maybe they should be.
Yeah. Well, look at the lyrics. There is not a single hardcore band that, or at least to my knowledge, because I'm not the biggest expert in hardcore, but it's satanic, it's dark, it's evil. It's if you could put the same lyrics on a black metal band, it works 100%. And Tweed knows a lot of stuff on black metal, probably more than me. He knew, I think we bonded also around this LLN, the French past bands, like, I don't know, we talk about them, vampire stuff around that time, around this early 90s in France, late 90s too. It's great, he knows a lot of stuff around evil, around different genres. He mixes a lot of knowledge into music, into art, no matter how you call it. And it's the same as Glorior Belli, if you think about it. People like to, and it's it's fair. Right? You need to put some label on a band. Like, what are you doing? Are you a madcore band? Are you a black metal band? Are you death metal? Okay, fair enough. You kind of describe yourself as sort of one genre, but then you have complete freedom on what you want to do. You're an artist, and he does that perfectly, same as I do. So we mix a lot of things. We send each other bluegrass, American music, bluesmen, all sorts of stuff. He builds cigar box guitars, so we also bond around this. It's all this freedom of creativity that I really enjoy, and it fits my profile.
Yeah. You, from what you were saying, I'm guessing that the meeting occurred because he was a fan of Glorior Belli already, and and reached out to you.
Yeah.
Were you surprised when that happened?
I mean, was I surprised? I guess I was happy. Surprised, not really. Happy. I have many different guests. I've met guys from Behemoth. I've met Pantera singer. We talked. So
well, I was going to say he was on a, I can't remember whether it was a Scour documentary, but I saw him the other day wearing a Glorior Belli t-shirt, and I was like, fucking, I'm a big Scour fan. I'm also a big Pantera fan. And I would certainly say one of the things that pushed me towards black metal initially was I remember him being interviewed in Metal Maniacs magazine and talking about his favorite album of that year, and he mentioned Battles in the North by Mortal.
Oh yeah.
And when I heard that record, I just knew immediately this is what he was talking about. This is Battles in the North. And I was, I was kind of, my curiosity was piqued because of what he said. But he's always been a fan of black metal. But it's one thing knowing the genre founders, like the foundational bands. It's a whole different thing knowing the chef selection, as my friend Cheyenne would say. And Glorior Belli is definitely, it's for people with an advanced palate.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to deny this, but, some people might disagree. But yeah. It's true that some of these guys we're talking about, like, whether they are famous or not, they must know their shit to be able to dig into such underground, not palette, but underground collection. So, because Glorior Belli is not that famous. I mean, we've had our weird moment. You could say maybe labels back then mattered. Southern Lord certainly was big. Candlelight, I think we did them all. The big ones. Candlelight, Southern Lord, Metal Blade, all this stuff. So of course the name gets out there if you sign with those big names. Although,
yeah, you guys were on. So Gators, Rumble, Chaos on Furls. You were on Agonia for that. The Great Southern Darkness, Metal Blade. Yeah. Sundown, Agonia as well. That was. I mean, 2 records. I think that's probably the most you've done with a single label. The Apostates, I know, was Season of Mist. And then Meet Us at the Southern Sign, Candlelight Records, Manifesting the Raging Beast, Southern Lord recordings. So yeah, you've moved around a fair bit.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, Season of Mist also as well.
And Season of Mist, yeah. So how come you guys haven't settled in or found a label home, found a label where, I don't know whether it's a case of or question of comfort or just that kind of suits you guys and feels to you like home.
I'll say there are two answers. There's a right answer and a wrong answer. I'll give you both.
You mean the answer that'll get you into trouble, or the answer, or the appropriate answer?
No, I'll be honest. I don't really have anything to hide on this stuff. I would say I have a problem with engagement, like phobia. So I like to challenge myself into starting over again and again. We can dig into that after if you want, but there is a bit of self-destructive mentality that I have, even with Glorior Belli as a band. So I started, we can talk about it later, but I started deconstructing it. So that's why at the peak, instead of going through all these business, interviews and stuff, I just decided I don't care about all this. I'm just going to go back to enjoying myself in my fucking bedroom with my guitars and doing my music. And the wrong answer would be it's like a bid game where you get the best deal out of, changing all the time. Think of it as an iPhone, and every time you get the new version, by selling the old one, something like this.
Well, it's also like people changing jobs. People move jobs in a corporate setting. Yeah. They'll move jobs to get a pay increase because typically you're going to get a higher pay increase if you go somewhere else versus staying in your existing company.
That's what
is that something that has been a driver? Is it kind of going where you're feeling most wanted?
I think it was a challenge with myself. As a joke, I was always thinking, how far can I bring this on the scale of music business? And brought it as far as I could, I think. And I was eyeballing Century Media around the time that Blake from Not Mystium.
Yes, I do.
The American band.
Well, I don't know him, but I know of him.
Well, we were good friends too before. I don't have any hard feelings around the guy, but he has a very bad reputation now. For scamming a lot of people.
I was to say stealing money from your fans is going to do that. But
yeah. He fell into drugs like really hard and stuff. But I really, really, really enjoyed Not Mystium, and he helped us a lot too back then. Like some of the first deals we get was thanks to him. Southern Lord, I think, was him. He also got one of my side projects signed on his old label. It was Battle Command. Something Battle Command Records. Credits due to Blake for this, despite his downfall, you could say. Where was I going with this? I lost the train of thought.
Well, we were talking about switching labels and kind of, what the motivation was to switch, in all the many changes that you made over the course of the band's career.
It was that's where I wanted to get. So through Blake, I could also get to Century Media, but that's around the time he completely lost it, and so then we lost contact, and it didn't happen. But I guess Metal Blade is as far as you get when you're.
Oh, I lost you there for a second.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. I think Metal Blade was listening to the conversation and they immediately hacked in. So, which is why you said there's a right or a wrong answer.
Yeah. there's a DDoS attack on you.
Yeah. I was interested in what you said about deconstructing things and kind of having this almost self-destructive pattern, habit in your career, in your life. Was that a byproduct of being young? You know, kind of that piss and vinegar attitude that a lot of young bucks have. Which I can relate to a certain degree. Or is it something deeper than that?
I think the primary driving force for this deconstruction is when something is too comfortable for me, I get lazy. Like anyone else, you know, like it stops being a real motivation, a real fire, a real need to create, and you just get lazy. You just do the same thing over and over again, and it's not interesting. It's not challenging. It's just boring. It's a bit like almost like a drug addiction, if you want to put it this way. When you create something and it's good, it's great. There's a great response to it. You're happy. But then what do you do from there? So I built, like I said before, I built a good or bad reputation for Glorior Belli up until a point where I thought I've had it with this whole business thing. It's not interesting. I want to be challenged again. And this is how I keep creating new records from all sorts of different, influences, vibes, etc. I like to build from the ground, not from the ninth floor or whatever, but from the ground up. And you could say it's part of the creative process to deconstruct, reconstruct. AC/DC is the exact opposite.
Yeah.
For example.
Well, Slayer being the exact opposite as well.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. Like I could totally get Slayer from A to Z, listen to them and be happy with it. But that's why I'm using this example to really emphasize the fact that this is very personal for me, not for necessarily the fans or the band, but for me as a driving force and being the only person who composes in the band. You really need to challenge yourself to not fall onto simplicity or, you don't want to do things too easy.
It's what stimulates your creativity and what kind of gets your mind in that frame of being able to express art in a authentic and in a meaningful way. When did that approach first start to manifest? Because I do recall, and it took me a while to wrap my head around the direction that you took after Meet Us at the Southern Sign, because like I said, I was such a fan of that album. The Great Southern Darkness kind of threw me for a bit of a loop, as did Gators, Rumble, Chaos, and Fools. And it's only been in later years that I've revisited them, and I can listen to them through different ears now, probably ears that are a bit more seasoned and have a slightly broader musical palette myself to kind of draw from. But I could certainly tell that there was a change in thinking or a change in approach after Meet Us at the Southern Sign. I'm curious from your perspective, when did you start to adopt that way of stimulating that creativity?
I guess it was around that time, like 2012, 2011 ish. It was the first 3 records that I was doing without deconstructing anything. And then from that moment, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, I need to do something new. I need to do something else, at least with the records, with the stuff.
What was the catalyst for that? Like, was there any one particular thing that happened that made you go, yeah, this isn't for me anymore?
But there were many catalysts. I remember back then, I was a lot into talking to many different interesting people about many different interesting things, such as, you're familiar with I'm going to butcher the name, but there is a couple guys who are writers in the States, affiliated to the black metal scene. One of them is Jeremy Krisner, the Ashna Offensive. So
No.
stuff like this. Well, I can send you references if you want. So I started getting into those occult books. Most of them, let's have an honest conversation, right? It's not necessarily always genuine, right? Sometimes you can feel the fishiness of a book of author.
Yeah.
But the most important is to always try to cultivate yourself. And from those conversations, from those readings, from movies maybe that I watched back then, I understood that the path that was mine is the one that only people who truly challenge, not the system, because that sounds like you're a system of a down.
Sounds like you're a hippie.
Challenge there are limitations in life, but there are also limitations that you actually don't see with your eyes, don't feel, don't hear, don't smell. It's beyond your senses. It's limitations that are imposed by many factors. One of them, at least I believe, is the spark of creation that every individual has inside of them is corrupted. To begin with, we shouldn't be made of flesh and bone. We should be free. The conception of freedom is chaos. It's the one that, the original chaos was not humans made of flesh and bones. We have something inside of us that is truly looking to escape, to get out. And this is what I do with Glorior Belli. This is why I make music, because this thing needs to get out. And this is what I express through many, many records. And on that moment is pretty much, if you would associate it with tearing yourself apart to make way for the light to go out. So I'm very metaphorical, but it's for you to comprehend the process.
Yeah. No, but I think I understand what you're talking about, because I've had this conversation with a couple of guests recently, but it's really been a recurring theme over the last few years. I'm fascinated by what gets a musician or an artist, and in some cases, particularly vocalists, but what gets them to that point where they're able to strip away that last veneer of, I don't know what you would call it. Like you use the word corruption, which I think is quite interesting. Actually, it's that last layer of paint between you and the audience. And when I say you, I mean what's really inside of you.
Yeah. I think you have two ways to see this. You have people are able to fake it sometimes. You can tell sometimes, right? You see a band on stage and they are good, but you don't feel it doesn't transpire that you get touched by this. And some others are able to express it. Only the ones that are true to this, lowering the ego, probably is the best way to say it. You need to kill the ego. Otherwise, you cannot express this properly. And then only if you are truly, dedicated to this, it transpires automatically to the audience. I guess same in a record. It doesn't have to be a live show for you to express it. You can express it on the record, but when I record things, I am on trance, like really just, I'm not a shaman or something like this, but it's the whole system that makes me is focused on one thing. And, it's almost like, the guitar is the extension to something I channel from whatever place you want to call it, but it's not me anymore. It's like a communion with with things that I need to express through the guitar.
Well, you use guitar as a medium, or as an example. Yeah, obviously, I know you're a fan of Pantera. I'm a massive fan of Pantera. I've said this before. You talk about a guy that can strip away that layer. I think Dimebag doesn't get enough credit for the fact that he was able to do that, because what makes him so brilliant, and I think it's the same thing that makes Matt Pike from High on Fire brilliant, Kirk Winstein from Crowbar, John Ottweit from Dissection, Trey from Morbid Angel. It sounds like when they pick up a guitar, it doesn't sound rehearsed. It doesn't sound practiced. It just sounds like it's natural. It sounds like music is just firing out from their fingertips and coming through the amplifier.
Yeah, that's what it is. And interestingly, I have nothing against Zakk Wylde. Don't get me wrong. I go see Zakk Sabbath live. I think he's a great guitar player, but I don't get it doesn't get me. When I saw him play recently with that Pantera show, he does a very good job on the guitar. Clearly he's not Dimebag, but but I don't get the connection that you could get from Dimebag. So, and you can tell the guy is an absolute guitar genius, right? It's no, there's no doubt about this. But yeah, it was an interesting experience, because then I could see, like exactly what you said. I am more attracted naturally to people who have the same way to express their art as I have, And Philip is actually like this. Philip is really underrated. He can play many instruments. He's very humble, but he's a musical genius too. He wrote some of the best riffs. Have you heard the collaboration he had with Tommy Yomi? It was.
You know what? That was on Tony Iommi's. That was on his solo album, right?
Yeah, it was a short, like mini record, I think. Maybe something like that.
I have heard it, but it's been ages since I've listened to it. But I know what you're referring to. I need to dust it off again and give it a whirl.
Yeah. So recently, because I started listening to Pantera again before the show, and I remember this existed, and immediately I felt like, oh, I need to hear it. I went online. I went to find it where I know where to find it, and it brought me immediately the feeling like, wow, this fucking guy is a genius. He can really get to you from those riffs, from those moments. The voice is like cutting through the flesh. It's perfect. He's also same as you mentioned. The other guys from Dissection, sorry, my French, and many others who, are absolute natural at this. There's no question.
You and I are 100% simpatico when it comes to our thoughts on Zakk, and particularly Zakk's performance in Pantera. I mentioned this on the news rant. He sounds like a fantastically competent guitarist, a guitarist that is technically superior to a great many guitarists that, perform in bands. I certainly couldn't play anything like that, but he still sounds to me like a practiced guitarist, a rehearsed guitarist. That additional layer of emotion, and I would even use the word joy, like just the feeling that you get from hearing Dimebag play some of those Pantera riffs. He doesn't have it. And interestingly enough, Charlie Benante as well, good drummer, capable drummer, doesn't sound like Vinny. Vinny had that. Vinny had the same ear for the drums that Dime had for the guitar.
Yeah, it was really. I mean, you said it exactly like I felt it. It was. very capable musicians, and probably their own band. Again, like, let's go back to Zach, because he's a person I was looking up to in the past. I don't know if you're familiar with Pride and Glory. I think one of his, and I love this band. Like some of the riffs there, it really get to me too and stuff like this. But right now, what he's doing doesn't get me, you know. But Pride and Glory used to be good. Yeah. I remember I've listened to that record a lot of times.
Well, I would say if we think of Black Label Society, probably the closest he has come to writing a riff that has that additional layer of emotion, that has that X factor, I would say is Bleed for me, which I think honestly is the best Black Label Society song. And it's interesting seeing them play it live. It's always the standout track. It's always the track that people respond to best. And I truly do believe that people they've got a, like, you know, I don't have much, I don't hold the human race in very high esteem. But what I will say is, in the main, human beings do have a way of gravitating towards authenticity. And you see that in music, you see that in sports, you see that everywhere. They tend to go where what that person's doing is completely and utterly convincing, no matter what it is. It's, you know, like if you take sports as an example, you can take one mixed martial artist who is, and I mentioned mixed martial arts because I love it. You can take a mixed martial artist who is an incredibly gifted fighter, but he comes across as fake and people reject him and boo him. You get another guy who's, you know, probably equal in skill, but his personality translates into the audience because what he's saying to the audience is exactly everything that he's saying they believe 100%. And again, I mean, I think there's also, when it comes to music, there's for sure similarities between musicians and, you know, professional wrestlers, especially in our scene. You know, everybody is a character. But they, you know, the audience is going to gravitate towards and embrace those characters where they look at somebody like Mortus, or they look at somebody like Attila and they go like, I absolutely buy into and believe that dude is 100% sincere about everything he's doing. Glenn Benton's another example. You know, people flipped out over Deicide because they believed that Glenn Benton was the real deal.
Yeah. Remember this inverted cross? I was fucking
dude. I was terrified of that shit when I was young, but I loved it, you know. But you know, he was like such a troll because he would be on a documentary, and there's a very famous one called Dancing with the Devil, and they're interviewing him about you know, Deicide's mission and purpose, and he says it's to make the most evil music and gain entrance into the 7 gates of hell. And I mean, he is literally going on the biggest tangent, and you know, with hindsight being 2020, now you know he was bullshitting and he was putting them on. But at the time, you'd watch that and you'd go like, fuck it, this guy is legit.
Yeah, I agree. You said the one word that actually makes the most sense here is authenticity. It doesn't matter if you're rooting for, you know, whatever you believe in or this, as long as you're authentic, this is what people want to see, you know, they want to be around people that are authentic. When I go out, I used to go out in Paris, famous metal clubs, you know, and there was all of the scene there. You could meet with I don't know if you're familiar with any other French black metal band, but maybe Antaius. Yes, this guy is legit. You know, he when he says "cut your flesh and worship Satan," you meet him live, and this is what it is, right? But you also have hundreds, maybe big word, but dozens of other people who just gravitate around these individuals, and they you can tell that they try, and maybe they believe very hard that they try, but it's not convincing enough. So, you know, it's not authentic enough. And then at the end of the day, well, I just had a cool phrase I remembered from someone. This is the real recognize the real or something like this. This is, but it's what it is. I think it's somewhere along these lines. You go to a metal show, and you know.
Real recognize real, by the way, one of the best ever hardcore songs. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Anyone that recognizes the title knows the album. Ice Pick, A Violent Epiphany, masterpiece. I mean, an absolute masterpiece. If you want to listen to manly hardcore, that is the album to listen to. You've gone through so many metamorphoses and shifts in the style that Glorior Belli does. You've brought in so many different influences. Like, you must have a very broad musical palette and musical taste yourself. Like, what is your background musically? What did you grow up with? When did you get into metal?
Well, I guess growing up is really boring story, but growing up, probably you could hear a couple of Deep Purple, Dire Straits, this kind of, old style, father kind of music, which was cool for me. Even, you know what?
About to say, don't be hating on some of that dad rock. There's some gold in that.
It's pretty cool. A band I always respected and still do is Supertramp.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen carefully to the record and really pay attention to the mix, to the instruments and everything, it's absolute genius. You could still learn from how they used to mix these records that they had back then. So yeah, those things. And then I got into metal around, I guess, early 90s, which actually, you and me, we're both at a good age. I think we have a perfect age for growing up with metal music. I guess I got around Metallica, Pantera, and all the early 90s typical bands that you can think of. Around 95, 96, maybe, I was already into black metal. Started as a black metal elitist. You remember, what was the name of this first communication? I think it was ICQ. So I was on ICQ with a couple of friends. I'm still friends with them today. And we were like, black metal should be this and that, and only this and that, and nothing else. Like, Borzum is the shit. Nothing else matters. And everyone has to go through this phase. It's like a thing with black metal mostly, where you cannot even think for a second that it should be perverted by any other things mixed together, which is the opposite of what I do now. But yeah, then you grow up and your taste starts developing, and you realize that it's fine if some people want to do pure black metal from A to Z, as long as they're authentic with this. But it wasn't authentic to me, because I started getting the guitar, picking up the guitar, and I'm playing riffs that groove, like AC Bath, stuff like this, Dax Riggs, Pantera again. So I want to groove, and I'm like, oh fuck. I just don't want to do the same thing over and over again. There's a Dark Throne recipe. Oh, I love Dark Throne. But playing this for me didn't make sense. So, and they actually developed quite their own song too. It's not the best example to quote.
But I know exactly what you're talking about, because I could, I'm not a musician, and sadly I don't have the talent to be one. But if I were to write music, the closest I could do to coming up with something reasonable, I think, would be a death or a black metal album. I love Sisters of Mercy, but I could spend the entire rest of my life attempting to write a single Sisters of Mercy song, and it would sound, no matter what I do, like complete dog shit, because it doesn't come naturally to me.
I know it's something you need to discover as a musician. Huh? And then once you find your style, define your style, stick to this and just, make it. Again, you talked about Dimebag before, but his style is recognizable from a million, you cannot copy it. So this is the thing you need to do. You need to develop your own thing, and find it first, of course. But yeah, otherwise you're not authentic. You're just a copyist, a good copyist, but you're just a copyist. It's the same as painting. Think about it. Many painters that we know today, I guess, I don't know, Caravaggio, for instance, this Italian guy, he started as a copyist, and he's not the only one. And there's nothing wrong with this, because you need to learn from the masters first. You know? So when you first learn, when I was first playing the guitar, I would play stuff from what I back then considered the masters. Probably you could maybe think that unsuccessful musicians are just the ones who pick up the wrong masters, but and copying is fine. But then at some point you're just like, wow, this, I'm going to take all this data set that I just learned, and I'm going to make it mine, because I also have something to say. And this is when you need your own core to express itself. And want to express itself. Otherwise, if you have nothing to say, then you can start a cover band. It's fine too.
I was about to say there's no shame in doing that. But you're absolutely correct with the comparison to artists. It's about finding your medium. And nowhere have I seen that more clearly, actually, than in the tattoo world. My friend Necrotted, who tattooed my right arm. Technically, the tattoo that he gave me is, I've got two big tattoos. I've got one big one on my left side, which was done by Dan Marshall, and one on my right side that was done by Necrotted. But the Necrotted one, I love the most because of how expressive it is. And when I've spoken to him, how he discovered tattooing, how how that was the medium that he chose. I mean, he can give you a very comprehensive story about the day he knew that was his destiny, and that's why he's able to express himself with such clarity in that particular medium. And he wouldn't be, he could pick up a paintbrush and an easel, and he'd be able to do a pretty good job, but nothing as good as his chosen platform, as his chosen means of expression.
No, that's correct. And you can even, it's a good example tattoo, because my tattoo artist also joke about this too. He says, even I could be a tattoo artist. You basically just copy a drawing on somebody's skin and you can just go over it, right? But if you want a good tattoo artist, then you need to find the one who puts his own, like you said, expression into it, and not just go over the lines like a copyist. But yeah, it's very interesting. And all sorts of art is based on the same principle, if you think about it.
Yeah. Well, my advice to anybody who wants to get a tattoo, I've always said this. Number one, think carefully about what you want to get, and don't just get little splotches of bullshit tattooed all over you. Then the other thing was, I said, find an artist whose work you really love. Go to them and say, I like what you did, yeah, and then just leave them be. Let them come up with something for you. And I can't even remember who it was that gave me that advice. I know it was actually Henry Rollins in an interview that said, they asked him about is there anything about his tattoos that he regrets, and he said, I regret not thinking through what I wanted from a bigger perspective rather than just the smaller pieces that I got. So that stuck with me. But my experience of getting a tattoo, on both occasions, it was so memorable. And I've never been one to look in the mirror and go, fuck, that tattoo sucks. I'm really tired of it now. But that's because I know that piece of art was created for me, specifically for me. I've had Necrosphère on the podcast, and he confirmed it. He's like, yeah, no, I got to know you. And that was what I did for you was something that reflected getting to know you. So I absolutely love that. I mean, I know we're going off on a tangent now, but yeah, just on the topic of tattoos, for all you young bucks listening, that's how you get fucking tattooed. Find somebody good, find somebody you love, and just show them, I like what you did here, I like what you did here, I like what you did here. They'll come up with something incredible that you're never going to get tired of.
That's true. That's the best tattoo advice I've ever heard on the internet.
on the World Wide Web, mate, if you really wanted to date yourself. So let me ask you this question. Where did all of the, when you started to bring in all these different influences into Glorior Belli, first of all, did any of the backlash and the pushback that you got from people that were used to that orthodox style of Glorior Belli, like what you guys cut your bones on, did any of that get to you? Like, did you pay attention to any of it? Because I do recall there being times when some of the blowback was relatively vocal, was relatively fierce.
Yeah, there was a huge backlash, you could say. But you have to know something, okay? When I used to go out to this, remember the story about going to the bars and stuff in Paris? People from that scene would already challenge me because I was wearing sneakers on stage, or I was not with the black shirt appropriate color or something like this. And I was always looking at them like, you must be joking, because this is, how does it even fucking matter? Of course, challenge me and say, well, you should wear this because through that you completely embody your character on stage. Something like this, maybe okay. I would hear it and I would probably respond to a argumentative conversation. But when you just, get into these kind of comments for stupid shit, you're like, well, maybe it's better for me to focus on what really matters and leave the scene do its own thing. And through why I'm telling you this is because I really got used to this mentally to be a castaway from all these guys. I was hanging out with my own crowd. I actually avoided metal bars as much as I could, and I think it saved me from being boring or doing stupid shit like they do. And not all of them, of course, but most. And it forged my mentality on the fact that whenever we had feedback on the records, I was good or bad, I was always thinking it doesn't matter, because I did what I thought was for me acceptable, and so that's all that matters. When I come up with a record, it's important for me that I'm satisfied. Once I had a side project, probably you never heard of it. What was it called? It was almost a Glorior Belli record, but then I changed my mind at the last time. The full intrepid experience of light. What was the name of the band? Oh, 11 as in adversary is the band. It's not even famous or anything. It's just, we had an Italian label. I think they released one album. Although it was interesting. I'm telling you this story because at this time I was close to Niklas Kvarfoth from Shining, the Swedish band. Also a very tortured character, you could say. But
by the way, one of the funniest frontmen I have ever seen in action in my entire life. I mean, there's not he's so different and so unique when he's on stage, but exactly as you said there, authentic, and it's mind-blowing seeing them play. I mean, if anyone hasn't seen them yet, I strongly recommend it just for the experience of seeing him in action.
He's a great guy. He's also fucked up in his own way, but I love it. All these crazy people we mentioned, they are all fucked up. They're probably same as I am, but it's great because they're all authentic. And the point of this story is that he was on the record too. We started collaborating, and I said to him, "Look, you don't want to do anything boring, and so I don't even want to do anything boring myself. Let's have a challenging creation process. I'm gonna just turn off all the lights. We're gonna, set something dark, just turn on the amplifier at home. and I just hit record, and I'm gonna go through an album from that moment to morning to dawn. And I did, and it just, I was like, it was almost like being on drugs. It was just coming through. I swear I cannot do it again. Sometimes I pick up my guitar and I try to play the same songs I created on that record, and I can't. I cannot even remember the riffs. But it was amazing, that creativity process. I think I came up with some of the best riffs I could ever come up with. You know, Mars Volta?
Yeah.
This was like this kind of craziness stuff, and mixed with black metal and shit. I was high on this stuff, and it was great. Have a listen if you want. Later, you can write to me an email or something.
For sure. I will. I think what you're describing there, Lars from Ecclese referred to as flow state when he was on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I think that's the correct way to describe it. Like if you hear a musician in the zone, it really is, as you just said now, it's like they're high on what they're doing.
Yeah. That was amazing. And, you know, this is why I think, the feedback on when we started mixing Southern sounds into black metal, for me, it was just, you know, it was going over, from one ear through to another, and there was no impact whatsoever. Doesn't matter. And you know, it's like a bit of a Andy Kaufman kind of effect, where it doesn't matter if people like it or not, as long as they talk about it, you still get the hype. It's a bit like this, you know. So I know that as long as I'm true to myself, doesn't matter the comment.
As long as you're not going to metal bars and challenging women to wrestling matches, like Andy Kaufman used to do.
I love this guy.
Dude, have you seen all those old? One can look them up on YouTube, but those old videos of him cutting promos on women and like saying, you know, women belong in the kitchen. Yeah. So absolutely brilliant.
Andy Kaufman is my absolute reference.
Yeah.
A lot of the shit I do is also influenced by his own style.
Now you say that, but you've come back full circle on this new album, and I thought it was particularly interesting that you called this record Glorior Belli. That it's, you know, this is a self-titled album. Like I've always felt like not with all bands, but with certain bands, when they give the record that self-title, there's an intent behind that, and it's basically to say like, you know, this is our definitive record. And I love the title of the last track on the record as well, When Battle is Fought and Victory Won, because particularly as I'm kind of speaking to you here, there's something self-referential to that, unless I'm reading too much into it.
No, you're right, you're correct. Every single record is not just a record, like, you know, the order of the tracks matter. The lyrics have a continuous story from A to Z. I think about every record in all the details, the cover, the art, the lyrics, very important, the lyrics. I give a lot of tips, you could call it tips, on for people who actually listen to, for them to, you know, maybe liberate themselves or grow, get better, some kind of self-betterment poetry, you could say, through the lyrics. And with the last record, nothing is there just out of the blue. You know, everything has been thought through very well. I worked 4 years on this one, I think. This is the longest I've ever worked on a record.
Yeah, because your cycle has typically been 2 to 3 years max.
Yeah. Usually, I'm very creative. I have so many side projects that will probably never see the light of the internet, the World Wide Web. But
the World Wide Web.
World Web.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I usually tend to get busy all the time with my guitar, and and this one I was like, okay, it's again like a challenging thing. Like, hey, what happens if you actually take longer on a record? Are you gonna be satisfied? Are you gonna change it? Because one of those old records, if they weren't out, I would go back to them and have this cliche of the guy who changes one frequency to the guitar and then goes back to the drum sound, and this kick is too high, the pitch is too high, and so I would never be finished with anything. So it's good that actually sometimes I set the limit and say, okay, you have to get this out. And on this one, on the last one, self-titled, it's very important that I took time on this, because I wanted everything to be done in a way that there is, nothing's left how do you say this? Untouched. It's weird.
No stones left unturned.
Yeah, no stones left unturned. Thank you very much. I like this one.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And do you believe that it's as I just said now, that this is the definitive Glorior Belli record? Like, say for example, somebody comes to you and says, "All right, black metal in France is forbidden. You're not allowed to. Actually, music in France is forbidden. You're not allowed to be in a band anymore. You have to stop the band." Do you think this is the album that you could draw a line under and go, "That was the best I could possibly do"?
No, that's it. I cannot ever say to you, this was the best I could do. There will always be, I can't, it's just by design, it's impossible. I do one thing and then the next thing I'm going to do is going to be better. Always. Because otherwise there's no point. Of course, it's a question of taste and all this, but if to me it is better, then it's fine. And for the next one, because there will be a next one, I will definitely find a new way to challenge myself through the creativity process and stuff like this. But this one is very important to me because it's the reason why it's self-titled and this is so important, and you could say definitive, is because it is not for me this time only, but it's also for Ukraine that I did it. And I wanted these people, I'm not gonna name names or anything, but I want specific people that I have in mind who listen to this to feel what I wanted to transmit to them. And in that sense, this is why it was very important to me to get through to them by making sure the message of the record is correct. It's a little, it's a deep topic, you could say, but I've not been hiding anything. I've been going to Kiev since 2012, I think, 12, regularly. And I started, of course, making friends there, like you would in America or anything.
Yeah.
It's a great country. It's a great place. It's great people. And yeah, what's happening, regardless of, politics and all this, I want these people to know that they have all my respect and they deserve it. And there's a great scene in Ukraine, Drot, probably pronouncing it wrong.
Drudka.
I love my French accent.
By the way, I could not pronounce that until about 2 years ago. So I think it was Vitali from 1914 that actually got me on the right track. I was like, hey, you don't say Drudka, it's Drudka. It's like, all right.
My God,
or Druk. I think I used to call it Druk.
Yeah, something like this. Sounds better. And the worst is I can probably say a few words in Ukrainian, and yet the French will always take, the ascending on the me trying to speak a foreign language. But this one is a great band, and we also have a Ukrainian label too. He released one of our shirts, I believe. It's a long story. It was one of the guys who um, remember the first days where Russia invaded Ukraine.
Yeah.
And then they get close to Kiev and they started to reach airport Hostomel, and he was living not too far away from there, hiding in the basement of his house. And we're talking about a place that I knew, like I've been to these places before. It's a little bit hard to comprehend if you're not there. And he has two kids and a wife, and they're hiding in there, and they hear the bombings all around. And he got out at some point trying to get, I don't know, water or something, some supplies. And there was a missile that just exploded nearby, and he got through his leg a big piece of metal that almost cut through. But
Jesus,
yeah, it's crazy. And he's fine now. He got through the hospital and everything, but his friend died on that shot. And it's a real story, it's not something that you politicize or anything. It's just a real story. You get out, you hide in the basement, you have kids to protect, you get shot. He's a metal fan like you and me. He's around our age too, and it's just crazy to think about this from a perspective that life is not always a straight line, and these people, all of them, they have been through so much of adversity. And the reason I'm telling you all this is that it's one example. I could say thousands of examples. It's just one example. Glorior Belli is bad Latin. Sorry, I studied Latin, but probably not well enough.
Yeah.
It should be something that means to illustrate yourself through adversity, through challenges in life, through battles, if you want to be a bit more epic. This is the only way for me to determine. You talked about MMA before. These people, these athletes, when they get inside that octagon, this is a brilliant example too of what is a Glorior Belli concept, because it takes a lot to get in there and to prove yourself that you can actually get through a whole battle in there. And it's the same with this guy's story and a lot of other people's stories. I want to tell them, like, this is for you, because whatever you're going through right now, this whole adversity that you have to go through, it just made you illustrate yourself in the best possible way, because you've shown balls of steel, you've shown courage, you've shown resistance, you've shown, it's David versus Goliath. These guys there, they are not fucking joking, most of them get cold. The next day they are on the fucking front line and they fight, and they fucking fight, and when you get out there and it's, for me as a French, it was absolutely magical first, before the war and all this. But when I first went there, it was wild, it was like, wow, these people are real. We don't talk about fucking sneakers and wrong color shirts here. These people, they have nothing. They cherish the records. It means something to them. The authenticity, again, same word. Like, it was very authentic to me, which is something most of us have forgotten here in Western society, modern society.
I was going to say, I think a lot of folks, I come from South Africa originally, so we went through a period where, when you got hold of that one CD that you wanted, that's what you would spend all month, probably half the year. That's the only thing you're listening to. You're studying every fucking ounce, every last word of the lyrics, every last corner of an album cover. But over here, it's everything has always been super easily available. And I do think it spoils people when you go out of here and you go to a country like the Ukraine where they're not getting bands touring all the time, and they access to music, access to the things that we take for granted is so limited. It does land it with you that, man, you're in a really fortunate position.
Yeah. And not only this, but also it makes you appreciate what you have more.
Yeah.
Many things that we have today, I hear my younger colleagues, maybe 20, 30 years old, I'll give you one example. It's a stupid, boring short story, but office is about 20 degrees ish, and it's too cold for them, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? Like, in Ukraine, they don't have heaters and it's minus 20 outside. What the fuck are you talking about? And yeah, this is what it is.
Well, over here, they said that office air conditioning that's set too cold is misogynist. So it's it's always taking it one step further. But my friend, thank you so much for your time. I love this new record. I am certainly going to be doing my best to sing its praises on this podcast, and I'm very much looking forward to whatever it is that you do next. And hopefully, at some point down the road, we can shake each other's hands in person, have a drink, and do another one of these, but sat down in person. I think that'd be fucking awesome.
Yeah, I'd love to if you plan to go to France or Europe, maybe.
Well, I mean, I live in the UK. So I'm, I'm just around the corner. Not Europe anymore. But if you're ever in the UK, let me know. Right. And if I ever make my way to France, hell yeah, definitely down for that.
Europe, I'll remember.
All right, awesome, brother. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The
Weltschmerz Wield Power by Glorior Belli off their new self-titled album, a major comeback as far as I'm concerned, of a band who I always felt were destined for big things as soon as I heard Meet Us at the Southern Sign. Glad to hear they've put out an album that I think is truly befitting of the level of talent in this band, particularly the level of talent that Billy has. Thank you very much to him for his time. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation. The album is available for a cool €6.66 on Bandcamp. You can also get a vinyl through Dark Empire Records. I'll post a link for both in the description to the podcast, so head over there. If you buy yourself anything, do let them know that it was old Jackson at Into the Necrosphere who sent you. Now, before we move on to the news rant, I did want to give a bit of airtime to another record that I have been thoroughly enjoying, Titan Blood, from the Visceral Abyss. I would suggest that if we were to start doing quarterly roundups of the best albums, which is maybe not a bad idea, but the Q1 winner, without a shadow of a doubt, for 2025 of the best record of the last 3 months is this one. Absolutely phenomenal, dark, bestial, gnarly black metal. You guys have been raving about it on the socials, and there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that if you haven't heard it yet, you soon will share in that opinion. So for your listening pleasure and to get you warmed up for the news rant, this is a track called Strangling Visions. Titan Blood with strangling visions of their new album From the Visceral Abyss. Unquestionably the Q1 champion of 2025. That album is available on Norma Evangelium Diaboli. I don't believe that Titan Blood do interviews, but if they do, and there is an opportunity for me to get any one of them on the podcast, I'll certainly try and make that happen. In the meantime, you can show them your support by jumping on Bandcamp, buying some music, and telling them to get their asses over to Into the Necrosphere, as many of you guys diligently do, and I cannot tell you how helpful that is. So if you are the kind of person that is, or if you the kind of legionnaire that is going onto Bandcamp and buying music and plugging the podcast, it really does make a difference. So thank you very much for that. Right now, my friends, if your name is Tim Lambesis of the band As I Lay Crying, you're a fucking piece of shit. I hate you, and it's time for you to hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, first headline this week, and I did debate whether to even listen to this song, because you all know my thoughts on Machine Head, but there is news of a brand new Machine Head single that's just been dropped today. It's called Bone Scraper, which sounds terribly imaginative. It says here, Machine Head have released an official video for Bone Scraper, a brand new preview track from their upcoming 11th studio album, Unatoned, due out on April the 25th via Nuclear Blast Records and Imperium Recordings. I don't really think it's possible for Machine Head to go any lower, to scrape the barrel any further than they did with Catharsis they put out in 2018. I thought of Kingdom and Crown, the previous record. That was shit, but fucking fantastic. Shit with sprinkles on in comparison to that previous abomination that they released. Yeah, like I said, for me, the only two records by this band that I find listenable are Burn My Eyes and The More Things Change. Everything they put out after that is actually so terrible that it even sours my enjoyment of those two. That being said, it's a new track. We are kind of obligated to give it a listen and see whether or not they've managed to pull off a miracle and not suck. So let's give it a spin.
No, this house of gold is crumbling. Bones, we scrape our bones and numb the
Love it just a loading, love it just a loading gun. Love it just a loading gun. Compromise won't get you nowhere. Arguments and pointless warfare. The price of love is the price of heartache. Your tongue at night pointing every mistake. Angels and devils cry, tears across the bridge of sighs. These demons, addictions, chaos we've sown. This house of gold is crumbling. We scrape our bones and numb the pain. Surgical scalpels on and scratch skin from bone. Scraping skin from bone. Love it just a loading gun.
That is absolutely atrocious. No way to sugarcoat it. It is unlistenable garbage. I don't know whether it's just me, but it almost sounds as though Machine Head in 2025 are now trying desperately to sound like Sleep Token, which, considering the fact that there are some slack-jawed fools that have been referring to Sleep Token as the quote-unquote future of metal, and Machine Head has form for chasing after whatever trend is the order of the day, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, way back when they put out Supercharger and the Burning Red, you know, self-styled after the new metal fad of the day, then they started trying to go after the metalcore set. Fuck knows what they were doing in the 2010s. Of course, Catharsis was their anti-Trump album, and was as brilliant and clever as the description would suggest. And then, yeah, we've got Machine Head trying their level best to sound like another band that is completely deplorable, Sleep Token. So, expected the worst, and was given probably something even more crap than I initially anticipated. Now, it does bring me to a question, and I need to check and see who it was that asked me this question. I can't find as a matter of fact, I think I might have forgotten to actually screen grab this, but I know it was asked. So apologies to whoever asked the question. I'm not going to be able to reference your Instagram handle, but I remember the question really well, so hence why I'm bringing it up. What are your 5 worst bands? The 5 bands that you hate the most, Jackie, was the question. Now, funnily enough, Machine Head is actually not making the cut. However, Slipknot, absolutely number 1. For a variety of reasons. Not only is their music complete garbage, and the members of the band all display sub 45 IQs, but their fans are the biggest collective of snot-nosed nitwits that I have ever seen in my entire life, and it stands to reason that they would be attracted to the kind of music with choruses like, if you're 555, I'm 666, people equal shit, and, you know, other poetry for the mathematically challenged. An enduring memory I have of Slipknot was when I first moved to the UK. Somebody paid for me to go to a Slipknot show in Brighton. This was literally like 2-3 weeks after I'd first come to the UK. Paid for me to go to the show. You know, I was a naive little man from South Africa. Wasn't really a fan of the band, but, you know, someone had paid for the tickets, and, you know, I'd never been to a big show, so I thought, let me go check it out. The one thing I'll never forget about that show, aside from the fact that the music was shit, the performances sucked, there was this weedy little geek that I would say was maybe 15 or 16 years old. He had clearly tried to start a pit near a couple of older lads that weren't going to put up with it, and so they put a little hurtin' on him. And midway through the beating, his morbidly obese girlfriend, sister, cousin, God knows what she was, that had used almost all of the Vaseline available in Brighton to ease her way into a gothic corset that was at least 3 sizes too small for her. And by the way, if you use up all the Vaseline in Brighton, you know you've done well, because they have a very significant supply over there for reasons that you'll know if you've been to Brighton. But anyway, these guys are putting a hurting on this fucking stupid kid, and this girl runs and flops over him, screams and looks up at them and goes, "Leave him alone!" That is the image, the enduring image I have of the so-called maggots, which is why Slipknot is at the very top of the list of the bands that I hate the most. At number 2, Rage in favor of the Machine. Tom Morello, I don't know who he paid off to get the qualification or degree or whatever he boasts from Harvard. He's a fucking moron, a commie as well. They're basically a bunch of corporate lackeys that are cosplaying as communists and make music that is part ripoff of Led Zeppelin and just part a load of fucking boring ass noise. If you want to listen to hip hop, listen to the good stuff. Listen to Eric B. and Rakim. Listen to the DOC, the Psycho Realm, Gravediggers. Listen to the real deal. If you want to listen to heavy music, listen to heavy music. But I'd sooner listen to fucking Limp Bizkit than listen to Rage Against the Machine. Total garbage. Number 3, Evanescence. Complete and utter crap. I would actually say Evanescence is a blanket catch-all for all of this fucking music that identifies as metal, but is no such thing. Anything that has those lame female operatic vocals, you know, always follows the same formula, the kind of mellow intro, you know, while they build you up for the heavy chorus, and then, you know, they exercise what little testosterone is available in the band to try and do something that's well and truly rocking. Fucking an abomination. At number 4, Sleep Token, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, God knows, as I said, who thinks this is the future of metal. Because if Sleep Token are the future of metal, I give metal about 5 more years before it is completely and utterly extinct as a genre. There is zero about the band that is dangerous. There's zero about the band that is interesting. Their songs are so unbelievably poorly written as well. I listened to we won't, and by the way, we won't listen to the new single that they put out this week, but I listened to the new single out of curiosity, and one of the things that really struck me about it is it sounds as though they've just recorded a whole bunch of random parts, and then on Pro Tools, someone has pieced together, like, oh, this part would work well for an intro, this part would work well for a verse, this is good, this is a good one for a bridge, and let's chuck this bit in there for the chorus. It's just manufactured, boring-ass fucking garbage. And then at number 5, that's a tough one, because there's so many bands that could make it in there. I basically don't like any cosplay type bands. Amon Amarth, I would certainly put in there. Musically, they're bad, but what I hate the most about them is the rowing fucking rubbish that they've created that I've witnessed on video and I've heard is commonplace at their shows. I can't stand that. Anything where people look like they're having too much fun at a show, basically. You internalize your fun and your enjoyment. You don't sit there and fucking laugh and giggle and do your stupid rowing. So Amon Amarth would be in there. Were it not for the fact that their first 2 albums are relatively enjoyable, Ghost would certainly be in there, because everything they did after, especially these most recent records, is fucking terrible. But yeah, there's my top 5 most hated bands. And, some of them are up for debate potentially, might change, based on how I feel at the time. But Slipknot is most definitely at the very top of that list. All right. Now, let's hope we can get some reprieve from that fucking muck that we just endured. Necrotted have premiered a brand new single. It says here, 1.5 years after the release of their last album, Imperium, German death metal force Necrotted returns with a brand new single titled Deus Ex, featuring guest vocalist Sven Dekaluwe of Aborted. Probably mispronounced the surname, so what? Recorded and mixed by Marco Beati and mastered by the great Marco Collins. Decent production, particularly the fact that the bass guitar, I think, really stands out nicely. It's nice and defined. I think that's cool. Marcus Braun, their drummer, tremendous. Really, really, really good drummer. But for the most part, though, the overall effect of this is, it is, like I've said about many other death metal or modern death metal bands, it's all show and no go. There's no truly convincing aggression here, and it's a damning indictment that if you watch any live Deicide clip from, the last couple of years, those old dudes in their 50s still sound a fucking million times more convincing than a band like Necrotted. And rather than speculate, I'll show you guys what I mean. So give me 2 seconds while I line this up. Right, got it. So I recently stumbled upon a high-quality live recording of Deicide playing at Wacken in 2023. I'll tell you something, these guys are in a run of form like I have not seen from a lot of veterans. I missed them actually the last time that they played in London, and a lot of my friends that were there said it was, par excellence, as they say. I completely see what they meant. If they played anything like they do on this recording, I mean, this is absolute top tier. But I want you guys to listen to the performance here of In Hell I Burn, a classic off one of the greatest death metal albums of all time, Legion, in case you didn't know. This, to me, this is the standard that any modern death metal band should be aiming for at an absolute minimum. Let me slap this one on you. I love the fucking deranged note that he screams on there at the end, but everything there is working. Steve Ashim, drummer, in the form of his life. The backing vocals that Kevin and Taylor are providing, absolutely brilliant. Glenn sounds like a complete nutter badass. The band is tight as fuck, and that song is completely and utterly timeless. So yeah, to me, if you're a modern death metal band and you're not able to summon the level of anger and hatred that Deicide can do in their 50s, then it's time to hang up the guitar or try playing a different genre of music. And I'll tell you what, there are some modern death metal bands that do it really, really well. I just heard one today. I can potentially give you guys a hint as to who it might be. Hint: they release a new album every single year and have done so for the last 5 years. I just heard album number 6 today. Holy Jesus, you guys are going to shit yourself when you hear that. If you guys can guess who the band is, there's a very good chance that you're a fan of the band. Trust me, you have got something absolutely extraordinary coming your way. I've loved the stuff they've done previously, but this blows it away totally. It is already a strong contender for the top 3 at an absolute minimum. Okay, next up, Ghost Bath. They've debuted a brand new single. Well, I Tried Drowning is the name of the song. Now, like I said, I liked the previous Ghost Bath record. This new one so far, the first single, I did not enjoy. It reminded me once again of the fact that I don't enjoy suicidal or fucking depressive suicidal black metal, whatever you want to call it. But that being said, they do have enough credit left with me that I'll give this a try. It says here, check out the latest single from Ghost Bath's forthcoming long player, Rose Thorn Necklace, which drops on May the 9th on Nuclear Blast. Well, I Tried Drowning is available for streaming together with an official music video directed by Claudio Marino. Let's give it a whirl. It's a moderate improvement over that first single, but it still doesn't cut the mustard. That fluting is not up my street. I think the beginning of the song, it kind of sounds like it wants to get going, but it feels like it's spinning its back tires in the mud a little bit, creatively speaking. It just feels like the song can't quite get going. I think the vocals are pretty decent. Again, I'm going to try and be a little balanced when I do these, these reactions, or when I give you guys my impressions of a song. Sometimes I know I can go a little too harsh on people, and I concede it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of talent, which I don't have, to go into a studio, and record a full-length album. But as a fan of the music and a student of the game, I can still give my opinion. Now, as I said, Self-Loather, good record. This one, better than the first single. That first single was called Rose Thorn Necklace. And at the very least, Dennis, aka Nameless, does a better job on the vocals, but it's still not for me, and it never will be, I don't think. I actually have a question here from a Legion member. Sunmai asks, you're not much of a fan of DSBM. Which bands for you have the aggressiveness to be acceptable? Honestly, the only band that is associated with that scene, but which I personally don't even associate with a scene, and I'll explain why in a second, that I genuinely like, that I consider myself to be a big fan of, is Shining. I know that they are considered a fan, or they're considered a part of the suicidal black metal or depressive suicidal black metal scene. I would actually question whether or not they even are a black metal band, and I don't mean that in a bad way. They're just a band that do their own thing. They play their own style of music. They do creatively so many different things on their albums, especially the last couple. That I think it's hard to dump them into any sort of label or any sort of category. I just think they do what they do, and I love it. It's creative, it's interesting, it's compelling, it's emotional, but they can also be really fucking badass. When they feel like being. If I go to a record like Fod Forlare, which came out in 2011, and again, apologies for wrecking the pronunciation of the record, but I mean that is a fucking superb album. You listen to the first song on that record, and that opening riff is fucking venomous. If indeed it's the song I'm thinking about, I might need to double check on that and post a retraction later on if it's not. But they do have these moments on all their records that are heavy and mean and aggressive, and then they've got these really somber, dark acoustic bits or slow bits. I know they've had I think it was on the last record or the record before that, they had this beautiful piano piece that I think it cuts in about halfway through the album. I just think it's a band that they are associated with the scene, like I said, but not really a band I would consider as part of the scene. They just do music I like, but the rest of that whole subgenre is not for me. For the reasons that Cheyenne has mentioned on his podcast as well. I don't like the attitude. I don't like people that wallow in self-pity and fucking misery. And I understand it's a commentary on the darker side of life, but it's just not. Give me songs about Satan any day of the week. I mean, at least there's a degree of empowerment to that, rather than I hate myself and I want to kill myself. It's just lame. There are people that are experiencing way worse problems than the vast majority of folks that are listening to any of those bands. You want to experience trouble, get airdropped over the middle of the Congo, or get airdropped in Yemen. Then you'll see what hardship is. All right, let's check out Autumn Nostalgie. It says here, Autumn Nostalgie, a Slovakian ambient post-black metal one-man act, will release its third album, Metatonia, on June the 6th, 2025, via Northern Silence Productions. For a preview, give a listen to the first song called Return to Nowhere. This one was featured on Black Metal Promotions. Didn't get a chance to listen to it, but that is about to change right now. The pickings are slim today, my friends. Of the 3 songs, Deicide excluded, of course, that we've listened to, this is the better of the 3, but that still doesn't make it good. It has kind of a catchy main riff to it, an interesting main melody, but there's no threat, there's no menace, there's nothing that sounds like, in Morgan of Marduk's words, it's a fist in the face of God. It sounds like the very best, it's a fist in the face of the school principal. It sounds like, and I'm sure that's not the case, but it sounds like that bloke on the photo that accompanies the article. It's like he's 14 years old and this is his first band, and he's he knows his way around his instrument, but he's not quite gotten to that point yet where he can deliver the goods. So that one, I'm afraid, is another thumbs down for me. Let's see what else we got. Crust put out their 6th full-length in May, they say here. It says here, blackened doom metal unit Crust is set to unleash their 6th long player, Where Light Fears to Descend, on May the 23rd through Moribund Records, produced and engineered by Artem Dolina and mastered by Richard Corvinus at Corvin Studios UK. They've got the title track here, Soul Grinding Abyss. Let's hear what it sounds like. All right, now that is a leap ahead from the fucking nonsense we've heard thus far in the news rant. That's ticking the boxes. Great vocals. As the song progresses, it just gets better and better. It kind of builds up with something that sounds... Initially, I sat there thinking, oh, that sounds pretty stock standard. And then they start layering one piece of greatness on top of it after another. When those vocals kick in, superb. And then that bit that we just paused on now, where I feel like all the music sort of tightens up and gets a little bit heavier, they really just hit their straps there. So that is an absolutely... Should it be a thumbs up or a top notch? Think we'll go for a top notch. I think that's a top notch, folks. Okay, let's answer some quick questions before we move on to another song. Lena Raphael Greywords has asked, do you also love symphonic black metal music from South Korea? To be honest with you, I don't actually know any symphonic black metal from South Korea. I've heard, I think, one band that possibly comes close, and I want to just double check that I don't mess up the name. Sad Legend, I think they were. And they put out a self-titled album back in 1998. That's probably the only South Korean black metal band that fits in that symphonic black metal mold that I can think of. I can't really think of anything else. As a matter of fact, I would be hard-pressed to think of too many South Korean metal bands that I'm aware of, or certainly that I'm a fan of. So, when it comes to horror movies, South Korea are amongst the elite of the elite. The metal scene, I think, sadly, is a little like my homeland's metal scene, lacking in real go-getters. That would be my verdict, or that would be my analysis at the moment. But tell me if I'm wrong, and definitely feel free to send me any examples of bands I should be checking out. We also have a question from Metal Sheck. Who are my favorite Pride FC fighters? Pride, the absolute glory days, and that is a very easy question to answer. I'll give you my 5 favorites. Number 1, Mirko Krokop. Number 2, Dan Henderson. Number 3, Fedor Emelianenko. Number 4, Quinton Rampage Jackson. And number 5, who would I put in at number 5? Trying to think. There's so many to choose from. I would consider Josh Barnett a Pride FC fighter. But there's, as I said, there's so many. Big Nog, definitely. Let's go with Big Nog. That would be my number 5. And by the way, if you are into MMA, let's be honest. I'd say 95% of people listening to this podcast that are into MMA have seen Fedor Emelianenko versus Mirko Krokop. If you haven't, one of the greatest battles in the history of combat sports, by no small stretch of the imagination. You can get it quite easily on YouTube if you haven't seen it yet. Make sure that you watch it if you haven't, because it is brilliant. I mean, it is every single thing that is great about mixed martial arts. Okay, let's move on to some more music. Dead Chasm sharing a new track. Death metalers Dead Chasm are premiering their newest single, Spawn in Absurdity. The latter serves as a preview of their upcoming EP, Spectral Tyranny, set to land in stores on May the 16th. Surprise, surprise, via Transcending Obscurity Records. I say surprise, surprise because, like I said a couple of weeks ago, they seem to be signing at least 5 or 6 bands a week. A bit of an over-exaggeration, but you guys know what I mean. Just, I don't know where Kunnell finds the time to, properly service all of these bands. So, hope the lad isn't stretching himself too thin, because he clearly loves what he does. But all of that aside, let's hear what Dead Chasm sounds like. I dig it. Heavy incantation vibes, but definitely not a ripoff. Like there's a fine line between a ripoff and a loving tribute. This is definitely on the loving tribute side of things. But they also do have a bit of their own thing going on there. And maybe it's the fact that from Italy, maybe it's the fact that I believe Lorenza, their vocalist, plays in a grind band called the Stench of Prophet. So maybe it's some of those elements coming in there. I also thought with that kind of buzzsaw second guitar, very Swedish. It's got a real, kind of dismember vibe coming. I was almost expecting to hear another Entrails or, one of these kind of retro bands. But as much as this is retro, it's retro in a different way to what the stock standard Metal Blade release is. That's a good thing. And the song itself, once things get fired up and going, really, really good. Also, and I know there's a bit of pushback against people mentioning this, but this is coming from a place of paying the person a compliment. But Lorenza De Rossi, who did vocals there, that's a woman, ladies and gentlemen, and she sounds fucking fantastic. So, really good stuff. Really like that. I think that is worth a top notch as well. Okay, let's move on to another one. Ondfodt reveal a brand new single. Black metal band Ondfodt have just dropped their haunting new video for Bakom Bleknar Skugor, the first taste of their forthcoming LP, Dimsval. Mentioned, I believe, last week that I like Ondfodt, and that I was looking forward to a new record. Glad they finally put out a new single. So let's hear what the first taste of this new record sounds like. Magnificent. Another example of why Finnish black metal is in rude health at the moment. Of course, last year there were a bunch of great releases, most notably that Last Horner album, which was phenomenal. And Ondfodt looks like they are leading the Finnish charge this year. That last album that they put out, Det Osterbotinska Morkret, was fantastic. Ondfodt, their EP, also fantastic, and this is no different. Aggressive, dark, nasty. It stands to reason that the guys in the band all play in multiple other bands, so they're seasoned hands. Even though by the looks of things, most of them are younger than 30, but they're seasoned hands at making music that sounds convincingly cult, grim, necro, dark, all of the great things that attract me to black metal. This gets another top notch. Glad things have picked up a little bit after the fucking desert, the creative desert that we were in earlier. But a couple of fucking brilliant tracks so far that we've managed to listen to. Okay, let's check out some more questions. Planet Metal BJJ asks, your preferred headphones for listening to music when not on your whiz-bang hi-fi setup. For listening to music, same as what I use when I record the podcast. I've mentioned these before. I'll hold them up to the camera so you guys can see what they look like. They are the Focal Batiste wireless headphones. I've got them wired up here, of course, because they are working as monitors through my microphone. But I think they're fucking fantastic. I got this pair on eBay for, I think, £420, so it's not cheap. But the sound is fantastic, and the thing that makes it even better is you can get up to, I think, 96 kilohertz. So you can listen to music on Qobuz, quite comfortably by going through the Bluetooth. But it also has a built-in DAC, and you can plug in the built-in DAC via USB. So if you've got like a laptop or something, you just plug it into that, and the DAC will upscale everything to high res, or at least allow you to play high res through Tidal, Deezer, and Qobuz. Sounds magnificent. The other thing that's really great is it's got a very, very cool app. The app allows you to do this thing where it analyzes your hearing. So it can actually analyze where you've got drop-offs, like frequency drop-offs in your hearing, and it will tailor a individual equalizer profile to compensate for that. So it's really, really cool. You do this like 5-minute setup on the app. It does like a proper hearing test with you. It shows you like, on the way your ability to listen to this or hear this frequency is X, your ability to detect this frequency is Y, and it shows you where things drop off, and then, like I said, it kind of changes the sound accordingly. That works brilliantly. Its noise cancelling works brilliantly. I think it looks fucking cool too. They've just brought out a better version of these that go for a cool £1,200. I don't think I'll be paying that for headphones anytime soon. But I think if you've got the money, if you've got a budget of about $500, you want to spend it on a pair of headphones, and you are in a country where you've got a reasonable, I was about to say a reasonable scene, a reasonable seller community on eBay, just go on there. You'll be able to find a decent set for a good price. Brand new, I think they cost £699 over here. I think it's probably $699. So yeah, give it a go. I highly recommend it. I had 2 pairs of Bowers & Wilkins headphones before this. I like the sound, but I think this is better, and I think that this is a lot more long-lasting than Bowers & Wilkins. Both my Bowers & Wilkins sets fucked up inside of 2 years. So, all right, another question. Kelu666 asks, are there any bands that you got into after they quit or that you missed during their peak? I would say mostly the old thrash bands from the 1980s, like the mid to late 1980s. Of course, I was into Metallica, Megadeth, Exodus, Anthrax, and that sort of stuff. The stock standard thrash bands, Testament. But the really good stuff that skated around the periphery, that was a little darker, a little harder edged, that took a little longer for me to discover. It was only really when I came to the UK that I could discover that. Partly because, one, I was too young when those records were being released. I was 6-7 years old. Born in 1980, in case you didn't know. And I also didn't really know a lot of people that got into that music when I was a teenager, so there was no way for me to find that kind of music. I made the leap from Metallica to Slayer to black and death metal pretty quickly. So it was only later that when I came here that I could, properly get into Forbidden, Sacrifice, Nuclear Assault, Dark Angel, stuff like that. Those are really the main ones that come to mind. I can't think of any others. Certainly none that spring to mind straight away. Brooklyn Bastard 777 asks, who's your favorite Scandado? Why Outlaw Scandado, of course. More music. To the Grave have unleashed a brand new track. It's called Sword Off. Once again, a band that underwhelmed on their previous single that we had on the News Rant, that we had up for judgment on the News Rant. It says here, Australian representatives or deathcore representatives To the Grave are streaming a brand new song titled Sword Off. You can stream it now together with an official music video. The new music piece was produced and recorded by Matt Clark, mixed and mastered by Matt Guglielmo. Let's give it a whirl. All right, the song is fucking excruciating, but the message is something that I can get on board with a bit more. It says here, Dane, who's the vocalist, comments on the new single. Sword Off was one of the first songs we ever wrote for the whole cycle. Knowing we wanted a more mosh-forward approach to a few songs, we came up with this one, and it went through very few changes to get to this point, in all honesty. The song itself is about the government trying to neuter the voices of activists in Australia with ag-gag laws and swaying public perception against them. It's paired with a message that this shouldn't deter activists and whistleblowers from speaking up and getting angry. It's assumed that this will help fight that negative perception and do more good for animals, when that's exactly what these industries want us to think. The video to us represents the many aspects of what the band truly holds dear. Animals, activists, our friends, family, and fans were all included and made this video what it is. Thank you for being involved. Kill shot, motherfucker. I was drawn to that because I saw today a news article about Tim Lambesis of As I Lay Crying. Apparently there's now a petition, I think, to file charges against the bloke. Let me have a quick gander and see if I can find that article. It's over here on Lambgoat. It says here, As I Lay Crying's Tim Lambesis faces animal cruelty petition amid ongoing controversy. Blah, blah, blah. It says here, earlier this year, home surveillance footage surfaced showing Lambesis kicking and striking his dog. A petition demanding an official investigation into the incident has since gained over 68,000 signatures. The Care 2 petition states, the lead singer for a metal band served a prison sentence from 2014 to 2016 for hiring a hitman to kill his wife, from whom he was estranged. He was released on parole after being sentenced to 6 years in prison for his crime. Now on camera, apparently beating, kicking, and hitting his dog in California. I mean, I wouldn't even say an investigation is good enough. What do you need to investigate? You already have video evidence of him doing it. I think we just proceed straight to the suitable punishment, the suitable medicine for this crime, and that's 50 lashes. So we do it Saudi Arabia style. Get him into the town square and beat the fucking brakes off of him. And he can choose either the 50 lashes, or he heads to the lion enclosure. Anybody that willfully hurts an animal, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any point. I don't see any point to them in society. I would be more than happy for him to be removed on a permanent basis, because as far as I'm concerned, what positive things can he possibly contribute to the world if this is the way that he behaves towards a, otherwise defenseless creature? If you'll do that to a dog, what would you not do to your, friends, family? Well, we all know that there's no limits to what he would do because he hired someone to kill his wife. And how fucking insane is it that he only served 2 years for trying to murder his wife? The guy is just a complete and utter scumbag. All right, over on the Democrats' Guide to Rock Music, Blabbermouth, we've got Exodus's Gary Holt commenting on the split with Steve Zetro Souza. One guy wasn't enjoying it anymore. Gene Hoglan says the new Dark Angel album is pretty ferocious. Slayer announce a massive US East Coast headline show with Exodus, Suicidal Tendencies, Cavalera, and others. Others include Knocked Loose and Power Trip. Interesting comment here, or interesting note, I would say. Cavalera are apparently exclusively performing Sepultura's Chaos AD album at that show. Now, as far as I know, they've done that in the past, and they've done Roots as well. So I guess you shouldn't read into it too much. But based on the their eagerness to re-record old material, you kind of have to wonder whether or not they are considering re-recording Chaos AD. I definitely don't think Chaos AD needs a re-recording. I mean, it's not a perfect album by any stretch of the imagination, but where those re-recordings they did recently, I think added a bit of oomph, added a bit of testosterone to those older songs. Yeah, I think that as it is right now, Chaos AD is about as good as it's ever going to sound, and it does capture a time in my life that was certainly very exciting. I mean, I remember hearing Refuse Resist for the first time in a place in Bloemfontein where I grew up called Rebel Music, and I just remember going from that heartbeat to, those fucking cool drums, like tribal light drums, and then just that guitar sound. I'll never forget how heavy that guitar sounded to me when I heard it for the first time. And I loved the album when I was growing up. Nowadays, I don't go back to it quite as often. If I want to listen to, early Sepultura, I'll go back to Beneath the Remains or Rise, or I'll listen to those Cavalera re-recordings. But there was a period of time when Chaos AD was just one of the very best albums on the face of the earth to me. I loved it. What else have we got here? Shadows Fall frontman Brian Fair blasts Trump tariffs over devastating effect they will have on the instrument market. I'm actually recording this on what was supposed to be Black Monday. But as soon as, and anybody who, does any sort of investment will know what I'm talking about. As soon as Jim Cramer said he expects a 20% drop in the market, I knew nothing would happen. And sure enough, as it stands right now, I'm up 2%. So I suspect the tariffs will be very short-lived. At least I hope so. But either way, how everybody is now suddenly becoming a fucking trading economist, it's kind of the same as everyone becoming a goddamn geopolitical expert and everything else, thanks to social media. Baby Metal have dropped a new single, From Me to You, featuring Poppy. When I was saying I'm not sure who should be my number 5 pick for worst band on earth, Baby Metal, without a shadow of a doubt. Complete and utter fucking dog shit, listened to by deplorable nitwits. I'll tell you what else I find to be completely and utterly pathetic and deplorable. There was some old bird, and I kind of made a joke about it last week, but I never quite got around to talking to Swartolf about it. But there's some old 67-year-old fucking former rocker who has now taken to OnlyFans, and I happened to make I wouldn't say an ill-timed joke, but an off-color comment comparing her to Dee Snider on Blabbermouth's Facebook. Holy shit, were a couple of people butthurt about that. I mean, butthurt to a point where you would swear that I was insulting their mother, number one. Number two, all of these simps seem to be absolutely over the moon and delighted for her that she had fallen on such hard times that stripping nude was basically the only way that she could make ends meet in the absence of of Social Security in Trump's America. So, I mean, and they came back with such delicious insults as, "Have you looked in the mirror recently? Says you." I mean, fucking hell. Are people that, are regular readers of Blabbermouth that pathetic that they actually think that OnlyFans culture is a great thing and is to be celebrated? I don't mind what you do for a living, but fucking hell. I mean, we should start getting excited about an old bird flashing her bits for cash. Jesus Christ, people are pathetic. Doesn't really look like there's much else here. Metallica's Kirk Hammett on Black Sabbath. My life would be extremely different if they didn't do what they did. That's the one thing that you can be rest assured with Black Sabbath, or with any. Now that Black Sabbath are going to be doing that final show, I can't wait for the 710 interviews where everyone says exactly the same thing. My life would have been different without Black Sabbath. Without Black Sabbath, there's no heavy metal. Oh, God, I mean, you just talk about fucking beating a dead horse. I have to give my friend Cheyenne kudos, though. If you are in that area, they're doing a warm-up show in Birmingham the night before the Black Sabbath show. Definitely make sure you check that out. Okay, this seems like a good one to wrap up on. Biohazard Films music video for new song Forsaken in Amsterdam. Do they have a clip of the song here? Yes, they do. Let's just get a bit of backstory to this. The first reunion gig from Graziade, Hambles, Schuler, and Seinfeld took place on May the 26th, 2023 at the Milwaukee Metal Fest, blah, blah, blah. Apparently they've been talking since 2022 about putting the band back together. Anyway, who gives a fuck? We all know they're back together. They're putting out a new album. I do have my doubts about the quality of the music that will be on the new album, because the previous one was fucking dreadful. Like, when I talk about loving Biohazard, I'm talking specifically about liking the first 3 albums, particularly Urban Discipline and State of the World Address. Really, everything outside of that is pretty mediocre. But, you know, again, it's kind of one of those things where all of these bands from my youth, I'm always rooting for to come out and do something spectacular, even though my brain knows that they never will, but my heart says give them one more chance. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to give Biohazard one more chance, and we're going to sample us a clip of this new track, Forsaken.
Forsaken! 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Forsaken! Are you ready? Put some lights on these motherfuckers. This is Forsaken!
That's a pretty shitty quality recording, but I can already tell that's way better than fucking anything off of Reborn and Defiance, Kill or Be Killed, New World Disorder, again, basically anything that I've heard beyond State of the World Address. So, yeah, not bad. That's quite a pleasant surprise. All right, folks, on that note, I am going to wrap things up, and I'm going to wrap it up with a band that I have spoken about many, many times. Seems as though I will finally be getting one of these guys on the podcast. That band, of course, is Daiva. The album, in case you don't know, Through Sheer Will and Black Magic, and we're going to listen to a song called Polluting the Sanctuary, Revolutions Against Faith. Man, I cannot tell you how much I fucking love this record. And if for any reason it has passed you by, stick it out until the dying moments of this track, and you'll see exactly what I mean. This is fucking brilliant. I'm also going to say goodbye. Thank you very much to Billy Bayou of Glorior Belli. That new album out now, as I said. Guest for next week to be confirmed, but it'll be a good one. I've basically got about 6 or 7 guests now lined up until, I basically have shows booked until probably mid-May. But as things stand right now, I've not recorded a single one of them yet. So being the superstitious man that I am, I won't be sharing details of those episodes until they're actually done. But if even half of them come off, the Legion are going to be very happy. So on that note, my friends, whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.